show?
Jeff Ritzman.
I'm not singing Jeremy
Jeff Ritzman.
Wow. So this is the first thing they're going to hear when they listen to the show. I'd like to personally apologize to all our listeners. This is what you pay $4.50 a month for, or $1.25 an episode.
Call it added value. Yes.
Added value.
You hear that? That's my chair, by the way. It's not an EVP. Yeah. Nor is it anything else. Thank you. Tonight's guest is going under the pseudonym Hermitage. You may know him from the message boards as Jeff?
A Hermitage.
Oh, that's right. Because he doesn't want to implicate his family and speak out of turn and embarrass himself and not be invited back to Thanksgiving. Pretty much why anyone stays anonymous in this.
Huh.
Yeah.
Okay.
But he has, much like Joe-Gooch, given us an outline of events that we can read and go down the list of experiences through his life and through the lives of intimate family members. So we're going to explore them. And you also may remember Hermitage as, that's right, the guy who told the toilet elf story.
Want to take a trip down the bowl?
And if you don't know what that is, if you haven't heard the live show, if you don't read the forum, what are you doing listening to this crap for? No. Then he's going to give it to us again right up at the top, because this was actually the first experience that he ever had of a paranormal kind. And it's fascinating, and it fits into the larger pattern that Jeff and I see with all of this stuff. So we're going to get that fully fleshed out, if you will. Yes.
And let me, before we move past that toilet elf note, let me make an offer. This is a never before heard of offer.
More added value.
More added value. That's right. Right at the top of the show. Because you people who aren't subscribed may not have to. Now,
wait,
we've had a number of people go through and listen to the listener roundtables, including Jeremy. And there is no evidence of anyone talking about a toilet elf on those episodes. So that stone is turned over and well scraped. I am positive beyond belief that at some point someone called the live show and talked about this. And if they did, it would be on our blogtalkradio.com/Paratopia site, where you can comb through those archives. Whoever gets back to me first and finds that frickin' episode, and it's not the one where Hermitage calls in, so don't pick the recent one and go, I found it. It would be a back one. It would be back probably.
What do you think? They're morons, Jeff? Is that what you're
towards
saying?
The start.
Is that what you're saying of our audience?
I'm not saying anything. Yes, people in large groups are fairly stupid. But the first person that gets back to me and identifies where it is and gives me a timestamp, I will sign you up for a free subscription for as long as we're on the air. So there.
Wow. You really want that.
So there it is. I want it found, and I want it found now. So let's make it happen.
There's one problem there, which maybe, which is that, you remember when we first started, we were doing shows at a different place. Did people call into that one? Because I don't know if we saved all of those.
Huh. No, nobody was calling into that.
I don't think anyone was listening to that.
No. God, I'd almost forgotten about that. That must be on your end. No. I think it was definitely while we were on Blog Talk, and I'm reasonably sure it was when we were recording Blog Talk, and that it was going directly to the Blog Talk site. It hasn't been that long ago, I don't feel like. So let's try to hunt this down because it's driving us crazy. I am certain that someone had called in, and if it was Hermitage and he called in like before we knew him or before he became familiar with the show, so be it. But I'm convinced that somebody called in who wasn't him and told this story almost verbatim. I want to know who it was, and if it was him, so be it.
But you know what's
you'll still get
the
free subscription for the rest of your lives.
You know what's troublesome about this is as I was sitting down, I think to start taping the interview tonight, I had a moment of deja vu where everything came back to me, including the dialogue, all of this, and it was one of those deja vu within deja vu. And in the last deja vu, I remembered that there was deja vu, and I remember talking about it. Ah, ha, ha, ha. It was one of those moments, and yet I was thinking, I'm still not sure that this happened because it involved a situation that hadn't occurred until just now in my life.
Huh.
So I look at that and I go, is it possible that Jeff and I are remembering something that happened in a parallel world? I don't know.
If you can find that.
Yeah, if you can find that
I'll
tape.
add $20 to the free subscription for as long as we're broadcasting. I'll add $20 in it if you can find the one in a parallel universe and send it to me. But if you can comb through our old live shows and find that call and give me a timestamp and tell me what day it was and even send me the episode. Download the damn thing and send it to me. Clip it out. I don't care. I just want it. I want to know who it was because I don't feel like it was Hermitage. But and when he started recounting that on the show most recent time, the live show, I was just like, we've heard this before. This is somebody else. Somebody else has said this. What the hell is going on here? So free subscription.
You're certain that it's not just that we read it and talked about it on the show.
No, I feel like we actually spoke to someone about this because I remember asking, what did it do? Where was it jumping to? I remember asking questions. And if this didn't happen, then clearly there's something weird going on.
Well, you could have been asking them rhetorically to me or something, right?
No.
See, the thing that's weird is that, I'm saying all this and I have the same memory that you do. I have a very clear memory of us talking to someone on the phone.
Yes.
About this thing that was not Hermitage.
And I feel like it was a listener. I feel like it was somebody that we knew as a listener that maybe isn't around anymore. Like certain people we haven't heard from in a while, like even in emails, just privately. There's been some listeners that, maybe are getting busy with summertime and vacations and all that. And podcasts always lose a few during the summertime. That's to be expected. But I feel like this was somebody like that was really kind of in with us that had been around for a while. And I was like, wow, listen to this. And I remember asking questions. I remember saying,
I thought for sure it was going to come up in the round table with the one guy. I can't remember his name now, but he was the guy that was always writing crazy things, and then we couldn't wait to talk to him. And then, sure enough, he said some crazy. And I put laugh track underneath a lot of what he was saying.
Yeah.
I thought it was him. I was waiting for it, and it just never happened.
Never happened, huh? I don't know, but we've heard that story twice now, and even down to the minute thing of I wouldn't go down to the bathroom unless my brothers were with me. I'm telling you right now.
Being knocked out on the floor, all of that, yeah.
Yes, I've got this memory of talking to someone about that before Hermitage called us that night and described that. And I want to know where it came from. Because if it's not on our live shows, then we have a problem. Because I clearly remember talking to somebody to the point where Hermitage is saying this. I'm like, yeah, and you were afraid to go with your brothers, blah, blah, blah. I was saying this in my head as he's telling me. So I'm like, we've heard this before. This person's called before. Nope. So this is a mystery that is plaguing me every time I record a show. I think about this now. So, like I said, free subscription for as long as we're on the air. To anybody out there who can find it, go find it. And this offer, by the way, does preclude our enemies. So if you're some washed up douchebag we've kicked off the air, or some asshole that has continually maligned us or something like that, don't even bother.
All right. Well, them's the rules, folks. So get to it right after this. Here comes the interview.
If you record audio for any purpose, chances are you want it to be heard. You want to attract the largest audience possible who can hear your message. That's where we come in. We're cyberears.com, a revolutionary internet service that will host your audio files and help you promote and track its popularity. Considering hosting a podcast to the world? We have all the automated tools to make the process as simple and easy as it can be. No technical mumbo-jumbo to work out. CyberEars.com does all the work for you. You record it, we take care of the rest. So don't delay. Go to CyberEars.com today and register for a free trial account. Upload your audio files and get heard. With CyberEars.com, it's your audio on your terms.
Hi, my name is Sater, and I have a podcast called Transmissions from the Bunker. I talk about nonsense.
No, Sater, we talk about a lot of things that aren't nonsense.
Oh.
Like politics.
And bourbon.
And religion.
And grammar.
And the news. We talk about the news.
And f***ing kisses.
And video games. And music.
And audio nerdisms.
So if any of that interests you, tune in live Sunday night at 9 Eastern, or find us at the-bunker.net.
Or don't. Whatever.
Paratopia, without further ado, please welcome to the program the one, the only, you know him and love him from the message boards, Hermitage. Hermitage, thank you for coming on the show and sharing a bit of your life with us.
You're very welcome.
Now, the first thing that is confounding to Jeff and I, the very first experience that you've had, is something that we talked about on the live show. You had called in with a live show, and me and Jeff were both like, we'd heard this before, you know, like, and not just that you had written it on the message board before, the old message board, but that we had talked to you in depth about it, and for some reason we both have that memory, and yet it never happened. So I find that odd.
I know, that's really bizarre. I mean, I did use a different name on the old message board.
Well, maybe that's it, because we certainly scoured the old episodes for listener, you know, the listener shows.
I'm telling you, this was a phone call. I'm telling you. I did not read this. We spoke of this.
Well, maybe we spoke of what we read. I don't doubt your
sincerity. I never, you know, I have no explanation for that. I'm sorry.
Well, nor should you. But I mean, you know, it's funny because, like I said, we went through all the roundtable discussions, or at least I did, and I think someone else, Nodwid, on the message board, and couldn't find what Jeff and I are even referencing. So, you know, let's.
Well, yeah, I know. In the hatch when I did it, you know, I went back to find it, and I was under. I think it was when Dr. Vaeni was on, and I wrote it there because, you know, he had talked about, you know, the Passport to Negroni and the you know, the elves and the fairy folk, and I thought it was pertinent to, you know, somewhat pertinent to the conversation, so the discussion, so I just put it in there.
Right.
But again, I went back and I couldn't find it.
Well, for those who don't know what we're babbling about because they don't listen to the live show and they haven't read The Hatch, it is the first odd experience that you remember, right? So why don't we just go through it, because, man, I love hearing it again.
Oh, okay. Again, it was 1963 or 64, so that would make me about 4 or 5 years old. And it was about approximately 2 o'clock in the morning. I wasn't sure. I didn't look at the time. But, you know, being that little, I'm not even sure if I knew how to tell time. But I went up to use the bathroom. At the time, we only had one bathroom upstairs. So, and me and my 4 brothers slept downstairs. So I made my way up the stairs, and as I got towards the bathroom, because it was pretty much at the foot of the stairs, I started to feel this buzzing sensation, and I wasn't sure where it was coming from, but, you know, I went into the bathroom, and it seemed to be stronger in there, and so I went and did my business there, and I turned to leave, and the only other thing also about the buzzing, everything felt heavy. It was hard to walk, I guess, or it just didn't feel, quite right. But, I just went and did what I had to do. And then when I turned around to leave to go, I heard this noise, and I saw this thing jumping about on the tank top of the toilet, jumping from the tank top to the windowsill, sort of back and forth, sort of playfully it even looked, just sort of bouncing around and going back and forth, somewhat quickly too, because I wasn't even sure what the heck I was looking at first. And, of course I was like taken aback, and I was going, what is this? Or who is this? And I think the first thing out of my mouth was, it looked like an elf. That's what I remember. It looked elf-like. And I remember, being back in the day, really liking the book The Elves and the Shoemaker. I had one of those golden books. It was originally a Grimm's fairy tale, but, golden books had a whole bunch of different stories. So that's what I equated it to. And I just said to it, where are you from? And he stopped all of a sudden after leaping about and looked at me and said, he pointed to the toilet. He didn't say anything at first. He just pointed to the toilet. And I was sort of, what? I don't understand this. What? I didn't even, I was, again, taken aback. And I'm not even sure if he said anything per se. I just got this thing that he wanted me to come with him. And I said out loud, no. And I went to go, I stepped back, I turned to leave, and then the next thing I know, I'm waking up off the floor of the bathroom. And the buzzing had stopped, and I got up really quickly, like, what just happened here? And I ran downstairs and got back in the bed and kept my mouth, I didn't say anything to anybody, except to my brothers, that the next night, when I had to go to the bathroom. I usually had to get up at least once a night to go to the bathroom. Some things never changed. Now I have to do it twice a night. But
welcome to old age.
Yeah. But I had asked them, could you go to the bathroom? Could you walk me to the bathroom? And again, they didn't know what I was. What's wrong with you? And I didn't ever share it with them. I just said I feel nervous or whatever. And so they did it for a couple of nights, and then they said, you know what, you're on your own, kid. This, you're waking them up in the middle of the night was probably not the best idea, but that's the only thing I could. And then that feeling sort of lingered with me for a couple of, probably maybe 2 weeks, and then it just sort of, I guess got over it, or I just sort of tucked that memory away.
And you never saw Toilet Health again?
No. Nothing close to it. No.
Now, what you've written here is that the being was snarky, and it said it lived in the toilet. Is that something you remember, or is that something you're just saying it must have been snarky to say I live in the toilet?
The expression on its face looked very snarky, and again, the face was really strange, and it just disturbed me because it really didn't look like the cute book elf thing. It had eyes that were sort of elongated but slightly slanted, like a face that was pulled really tight, like crosswise, and just like stretched. Like I had mentioned that it reminded me sort of someone who had a botched plastic surgery, and they just keep tightening and tightening the skin until it looked really intense or just creepy to look at.
Well, when you say that he was jumping around the room, was he doing backflips or just literally just jumping around?
No, he started dancing, almost dancing, like not doing backflip. He was moving so fast, he was sort of like leaping and hopping on a moonshot. So you just boom, sort of back and forth like that. And
Jeff, what was the story in Communion Enigma? Was it elves leaping around a room?
Yeah, they were. That would be the blue guys, I guess. I guess, for lack of a better way that they described it, was the blue acrobats jumping around the living room. I guess on top of the couch and then the floor and then off the wall and all of that. So yeah, I mean, there's that. I'm curious if if you're watching this little thing kind of jump from the back of the toilet and maybe onto the windowsill or what have you,
Right.
what was the nature of the movement? Do you follow what I mean when I say that? Was it
No, not really.
instantaneous, or could you actually follow him with your eye as he jumped around from place to place?
He was moving really pretty fast, so it was a blur. It was kind of, at times, it appeared to be a blur. And then at other times, like when he stopped and looked at me, and that's when I got the creeps, and I was like, I really don't want to be here right now.
Okay.
And especially when he made the indication. And again, I apologize because it was so long ago. I'm not sure if he said this or I just got this impression that he hey, like, come on, let's go, And I was like, I'm not going anywhere, and except back to bed. And so I just backed away, and the next thing I knew, I woke up off the floor.
Now you said he was dancing, which is kind of another communion tie-in, because that's at least in the film version of things, which I'm assuming, and I haven't read the book in years, but when Ann Strieber says, "What were they doing?" after he comes back from that last night out when he goes to seek them out, well, what were they doing? And he said, dancing. and she said, dancing what? And he says, the bossa nova. How do I know? So that reminds me of like the dancing that you're talking about. I mean, was this kind of like a bobbing, or was he kicking his feet, or is that too much to ask to try and remember?
No. He seemed to be hopping almost, sort of bouncing almost.
Okay.
And that's what I bouncing, but then sort of moving fast sideways too.
I'm sorry, was he hopping one foot to the other?
Yeah, sort of like, it almost reminded me like if somebody was dancing but had a hot foot. Sort of like, but doing it very fast, moving more fast than I've ever seen anything move before. Up to that point, being only 4 or 5, and I don't think I've ever seen anybody move that fast.
Might I just add here that if this were not true, how hysterical this is. I mean, this is hysterical.
I know.
It's hysterical. I'm picturing this, I'm picturing this, and it's just like, it's the most hysterical thing I've ever heard of, which is why I know it's got to be true.
Well, here's the thing. I mean, you're looking at this. When you're looking at it and it's dancing around, are you laughing? Are you giggling? And then it stops and puts its attention on you, and then it's scary? Is that kind of the mood change, or what was the mood before?
Yeah, the buzzing was disturbing, I guess. I mean, in the back of my mind, I was like going, what is that buzzing noise? And I mean, now, I guess it almost reminded me of like a buzzing, like if a light fixture was buzzing. Like, how some of the old fluorescent tubes buzz, or like that. That's what I maybe akined it to, because I know we had fluorescent lights in the house, but it wasn't like that, because it was everywhere. It felt like it was in my body too. It felt like the whole room was like that. It wasn't just like, oh, there's a little buzz on top of the ceiling.
Well, let me ask you this. I mean, if he was moving around place to place and then pointed at the toilet, he was standing still at that point, right?
Yes.
Once you kind of turned around or said no, did he begin kind of dancing around again, or was it just like when you turned your back, he was standing on the toilet back?
As far as I could tell, I mean, I wasn't sure when I turned my back to him. I didn't know what he was doing.
Of course not, right?
But I don't know. I mean, after he said where he was and you want to, come on again, he did start moving about again.
Okay.
And I just sort of went, no, and I backed away, and then I turned to get the heck out of there, and then I don't remember anything except waking up.
That's when he hit you on the back of the head with the proverbial monkey wrench at that point, I guess, is the way we look at it.
Or a big plunger. I'm not sure what he did.
Right, yeah. Yeah.
Well,
but,
Jeff, is this something we can talk about? Because I'm pretty sure that on one of the episodes we talked about, we talked around, I don't think we really exposed what the conversation was, but talked around your shrouded visitor being at the glass door and then zipping off, much like we'd seen in the Lighthouse episode of Ghost Hunters. I'm pretty sure we talked about that.
Yeah.
Was that the time that he was hopping around on one foot to the other? I mean, it sounds an awful lot like that.
Wow.
Do you remember that?
I do. Yeah, I definitely remember the sight of seeing him zip away like that.
I could have sworn you said that he was doing this weird
I
thing where
think
he's hopping one foot to the other, like
it
not
wasn't
like
even
it was
hopping.
cold out, but like
it wasn't hopping. It was like he was rocking from one foot to the other, which seemed unusual because he's usually pretty bone still most of the time. But this time, I remember he was kind of like the kid waiting for show and tell. He was kind of almost not nervously rocking foot to foot, but just very slowly foot to foot. And then when I, kind of approached that direction or got up, that was when it was kind of, and it has that same appearance as you see in Ghost Hunters, or you see in the in some of the UFO videos where something doesn't take off slowly, but it's just instant acceleration without any, I don't know, almost like something sweeps it away rather than there's motion going on, if that makes any sense at all. It's a very unnatural looking movement.
Yeah,
and
that makes a lot of sense, actually.
Yeah, so that's just something that your head can't quite reconcile as normal.
Sort of like the Gulf Breeze disc when it goes,
absolutely,
sort of pulls back and then goes.
Yes.
Yeah.
In 1964, your mom had a near-death prevention, and this sort of gets to a theme in a lot of your family's experiences. So tell us about this.
Yeah, my mom, back when it happened, I don't think I actually heard about it right away because I was still pretty little. I was like 5 years old. And, but my mom has retold this story a couple of times to us. And so much so that she crocheted us all these little guardian, clothing pick, clothesline angels, like where you take a clothesline hanger. I can't even think of the name, but she knitted something that looked like a little angel, and I guess my sister helped her write the story. Not write the story. Recollect the story. Put it, because my mom's now, she has Alzheimer's. She's going to be 90 this July, but she's doing okay. She's on medication and she's doing pretty good. But she talked about this. This occurred back then. She was crossing the street to go to the bank, and there was nobody on either side of the street. It was early in the morning. I think it was just about when the banks, were about to open. And she was actually looking down. She was looking at what she had. Like I think she had her, a bank book with her and stuff. This is back in the day, I guess I don't even know if banks have bank books anymore, but she went to step off the curb and she felt someone grab her by her, I believe her right shoulder, and yanked her back up onto the sidewalk. And as they did, this car came out of nowhere, barrel-assing down the road. It was a huge black car, but it was a huge car. And it was like somebody who was obviously inebriated or something, because they were like really out of control. And it went right towards the spot where she was going, to step. Had she been there, she would have been gone. And so after she collected her wit, she turned around to thank the person that was, that had helped her, and there was nobody there on either side of the road. There was no one there. And she was really shook up. I think she went later to the bank. She went back home. It was only like a couple of blocks from our house.
Was she a religious person before that?
Not, she's, I was raised Catholic, and, we all did the, go to church every Sunday thing, but we weren't my family, at least back then, we weren't super religious. But back then in the 60s, you tend to be more followed by, I think this is back even when they were still speaking Latin in church, and they had the priest turn away from you. He wasn't even talking to you. He was talking to God. So everybody, just shut up and listen or whatever. But yeah, she wasn't a particularly religious, she wasn't, hell-bent for leather kind of person. She was just,
Did this change anything?
Well, it's hard to say because being a little kid back then, I really didn't. No, I don't think it did. She did liken it to, she's called it her guardian angel, so maybe it did renew her faith. I never really asked her that. When I see her in July, I'll ask her. No, she just sort of, every once in a while she'd talk about, what had occurred, and then finally, I think 2 years ago, with the help of my sister, I mean, I'd heard the story, when I was, older, like around 10 or 11, but I think back then I really didn't hear about it till a couple of years later. But it'd been sort of a thing that, you sort of handed down. You heard it, every, maybe once a year, twice a year about that. But she really didn't go on and on about it. She, would just bring it up in, she didn't just blurt it out, out of nowhere. But, yeah, so
okay.
That was that.
In 1965, the next year, there's a big blackout on the East Coast. And what happens? It sounds like almost a blackout or a time slip or a freeze or something that happens in conjunction with this. What is this?
Yeah, I've always remembered this, but it was very short. There was a big blackout in I think September of 1965, and I remember that much because the power was out for a couple of days, I think. But I remember when we, when it blacked out, we had the big blackout and all the candles and stuff. We, lit candles and everything, and it was, it was a lot of fun, being a kid. It was like camping out sort of inside. And, I remember my brothers and sisters, we were all goofing around and playing and stuff. But we only had so many candles, as I recall. And I think maybe they had one flashlight. And everything, after the lights, everything started to burn out, it just seemed like everything got quieter and quieter, and everyone, was either going, I thought everybody was falling asleep, but I was standing up, and I'm calling, where are you? Where are you? I got to find you, and I was like sort of blind man's bluff, going to the couch, and I'm feeling around trying to find my siblings, and I did find, I could feel one of them. They were there, but they weren't responding to me, and I shook them, come on, and I thought they were playing with me, and I really only actually got a hold of one of my siblings. I'm not sure which one. I think it was one of my brothers, and I just said, who is this? Is this you? Is this you? Wake up, and they weren't responding, and I started calling out to them, and then they didn't respond, and then that's all I remember, and then that was it. It was a very short event, I guess we'd say, and that was pretty much it. And I don't know if I ever brought it up to them.
Jeff, have you ever experienced anything like that? Because it sounds like stuff I've read, but not experienced.
I mean, I've definitely heard people talk about things like that when it comes to, a husband or wife in the bed next to them, and something weird happens and they try to wake the partner up and they don't wake up. They don't respond to anything. They're effectually
that I've had.
Not there. I mean, that seems to be sort of the same kind of thing. I mean, the only thing that I can recollect that's sort of like that was something that I probably read. I mean, there's a bigger part to this, but driving to West Virginia with my mom and dad, and there was on another trip, aside from what I read from the book, there was another time that there was something very similar to that when going through a tunnel. Again, this is when I was very, very young. This is probably before what I read out of the book, but the same kind of thing. I was calling for them. We were clearly moving in the car. It was dark. And no one was answering, and yet I could not see anybody in the car. So, I mean, it's sort of like that, but much, much shorter lived, and it certainly didn't end with waking up and not having any memory from that point on. This kind of like, we ended up pulling into a gas station and everybody was fine. But yeah, I don't think the notion of catatonic spouses or family members is out of the question for any of this stuff. That certainly seems to be a common thing.
Yeah, but it also, I mean, this has more the feel of the room goes frozen, almost like time stops, and you're in this sort of subspace area now.
Mhm.
Trying to wake people up. I feel like I've heard that before in group situations.
There's an account from Maryland that I actually worked as probably like the second or third person I ever did an investigation thing on. And there's a diner in town here that the woman who worked there had contacted me. She'd had lifelong weird experiences, and she didn't quite know what to make of them. It was pretty clear to me she wasn't aware of UFO phenomena stuff. She'd never had a UFO sighting. And she was talking about a Saturday or Sunday night late in the evening. And basically, she was cleaning up and doing her tables and went over to ask this family sitting at a table if they wanted anything else. And everybody, she said it was like everybody just stopped moving. And there was a clink here and a clink there and then absolute silence. And she said that at that point, she turned around and nobody was moving. Everyone was stopped. Nothing was hanging in the air. It's just people weren't moving anymore. And no one was talking. And there was no chatter. And there was no noise at all. And and the funny thing that she says, even the sizzle of the hamburgers and stuff frying in the back stopped. And she said with that, there were two men that came in and escorted her out the door. And then she had no memory from that point on. She actually came to in her car about 3 a.m. the next morning. And the people from work wanted to know where she had gone to. So there's that one. And that certainly kind of fits the mold of time stopping and possibly somebody being removed from a location and showing up somewhere else.
Your next event is in 1974, so there's a 9-year gap. Did any of this make an impression on you that you could look back and tell stayed with you in those 9 years, or grew you in some way? If that's even the right way to put it.
I don't know. Well, I know back, I guess it was either, I'm not sure when that movie, UFOs Past, Present, and Future came out. I remember seeing it back on, believe it or not, Nantucket Island, had a little movie theater there, and they were showing this movie. And we were there because my sister and brother-in-law had a guest house there, and we were there visiting, and we just happened to go see it, and that sort of piqued my interest about this thing. Not that I even could relate it to that. I just thought it was an interesting subject, so I just started, reading up on. Started around that time, 73, 74. I guess I started reading up on the subject. Didn't really, I didn't really think about it till then.
Well, you say here in 1974, your 4 sisters and niece have a UFO sighting, and you say that, and we'll get into that in a sec, but you said the next day you tried to be a MUFON investigator and sketch what they saw. When you say that, did you know what a MUFON investigator was back then, or are you just saying that now?
No. I'm not sure if I even knew if MUFON was around. I mean, I knew I read books about UFOs, and I just wanted to try to draw what they saw.
So
and
at
I'm
that point,
going
you
back
knew what UFOs
now. When I went,
did they know what UFOs were?
I guess they did, because I was talking about it myself around that time. Because again, like around 73, or it couldn't even have been 72. I started reading on the subject. I started getting books out of the library, and I'm not even sure. I used the word MUFON, but I used it now. But I don't know if I used it back then. I think I read about investigators doing, investigating the subject. I was just trying to be an investigator. I just used MUFON now as I don't know, just as a reference point.
Sure. So you say that that they didn't really want to even talk about what had happened, and that you don't even think you've brought it up since. So what was it that happened that was what they don't want to talk about? What happened?
What happened was, again, I hadn't heard about this till the next day, but we were talking about it the night, what had happened the night before. I had slept through it, apparently. My youngest sister saw this straw, like it was like a glowing shaped straw hat kind of thing with mist around it above the trees, like pretty close to our house. It couldn't have been more than, I don't know, 75 yards from the house. was above the tree line, just above the trees, sort of in between the trees. Oh, no, not in between the trees, but like, like if there's a tall tree and a high tree and a low tree, it was sort of like from that perspective, it looked like it was sort of sitting in between the trees there, just sort of bobbing back and forth. And so I said, well, and I asked him to describe it, and I drew it, and I said, well, what happened next? And my other sister said, well, I got caught on the post of the bed, and then I couldn't move, and then we all went back to bed. And I was like, oh, that's it? And, and he said, yeah, that's all. And so I just sort of went, oh, okay. And they just seemed kind of nervous about talking about it. So I just said, you didn't see anything else? And they just said, no, that's all. We just went back to bed. And I go, why did you go back? Hey, I asked, why did you go back to bed? He goes, well, it was late and, we wanted to go to sleep. So I was like, I wish they had woken me up, or ran upstairs and woke me up. That would have been great. I would have been able at least to, maybe see something. But they were just pretty quiet about it. And I just thought that was really odd that they just didn't want to talk about it. But, in hindsight, of course, it was just something beyond their,
right.
comprehension. So they just had no place to put it like most of this stuff. You just sort of tuck it away or just don't want to think about it because it's not part of your real, your quote-unquote real experiences,
Right. And then 2 years later in 1976, your older brother sees an even probably more dramatic object. What happened there?
He worked on, I'm trying to remember where, on the North Shore, I think, of Long Island. He was on the Meadowbrook Parkway driving home from work when he saw a pretty large silver disc with 4 lights on it on the horizon. I don't know if you've been on Long Island, but it's pretty flat. There's not many hills or, it's slightly hilly, but it's you can see pretty far. And it was about 25 degrees above the horizon line. And it was, again, about the size, if you put your arm out, it was about the size of a hand, which is pretty big. And he said it was it was stationary, sort of bopping there with the lights on it. And this was pretty, he said it was still light out. He said it was like probably 4 or 5 o'clock. And he's not sure if anybody else saw it. I mean, I guess there were other cars on the road, but it took off really fast. It just went up and I don't know if it was like the Gulf Breeze thing, but it was stationary and then it went straight up and or diagonally up.
Like it arced away kind of thing?
Yeah, and it just went really fast, and he was like, again, flabbergasted and didn't know what to think of it, and just, again, I think he told us back then, but I didn't remember him telling me, and I don't think he said, and he told me this recently when somehow this came up. He said, I don't think because I really didn't tell many. I said I told a few friends, and that was pretty much it. And then if anybody gave him a hard time about it, he just shut up about it and just, went on with his life.
Do you get the sense that your relatives secretly ponder this more than they're talking about, or do you really think they've just sort of blocked it out and go on with life?
I think, like anything else that's strange, I think hopefully you're able to integrate it into your system, sort of like in some way at least, or not, or you just tuck it away and go, I'm not going there, I don't want to think about this. But I think I don't think people ever, again, you guys have spoken about this many times, you don't forget, truly, no matter what. I think really, somewhere tucked in your mind, it's there.
And then the next thing is in 1979, 11:35 p.m. in the summer, and you say that these could be Earth lights, but they seem to move in a coordinated fashion, right? Why don't you give us this background?
Yeah, I spoke about this on the live show when Ted Rowe was on. I was driving home from my sister's house, and she lives near Connecticut State Park on Long Island, and the road I was driving on was called Pond Road. and I was driving home from there. It was about 11:30 at night. It was summertime. I had the windows rolled down, and it's laid out Pond Road. On the left of Pond Road, there's houses sporadically, but there was still woods there at the time. And on the right, there was Connecticut State Park, which is separated by a chain link fence with barbed wire running across the top. And on that side, there were several streetlights, at least part of the way. There were several streetlights where the residential houses were, but then as the residential houses subsided on the left side, the streetlights sort of, were no more. There was like a couple. I was just driving by looking, and it looked like one of the lights from the streetlights moved. It wasn't part, I thought it was part of the streetlight, but it actually moved away from the streetlights and went down in between the trees into the park and started going in between the trees, sort of running parallel with my car. Not totally directly, like right alongside my car, but slightly ahead. And so I, started watching this thing going, what the hell is this? And I slowed down, and first I thought, I was trying to be rational. I'm going, okay, is it a reflection from something in my car? And it wasn't, the windows were rolled down. I was looking straight through the window. Then I thought it might be the coning tower from Isaac MacArthur Airport, but it's like 5 miles away, and it wasn't a foggy night. So, they usually do that sweeping motion, at least as far as I know, when there's fog and, planes are trying to land. So it didn't appear to be that, because that has like a sweeping motion. And this light was sort of gliding in between the trees. And then I thought maybe it's a light of an outbuilding that's in the park, like a restroom or some park office thing, and the light is sort of just, I'm seeing it almost like a picket fence effect, where you're like, you see a light pass behind a picket fence, and it's sort of like, it's the light's stationary, but I kept ticking off these things, going, that's not it. That doesn't appear to be it. What is this thing? And I wasn't nervous then. I was fascinated, really, more than anything. And then I'm like, okay, when I stop the car or slow down, and I was going really slow, and there was nobody on either side of the road. If I stop the car and it's a stationary thing, it's going to stop when I stop. And I stopped. It kept going just a little bit more and then stopped. And I'm like, okay, it's obviously moving. And then I just thought to myself, am I going to climb over this barbed wire fence at 11:30 at night by myself and see what this thing is? The park was closed, so, if I were trespassing, and I'm like, no, I'm not going to do anything about this. I'm just going to go home. And the light started backtracking the way it came, pretty much. It seemed to be going the same way it had gone. And I got home, and my family was in the kitchen playing Monopoly. My brother-in-law was there, my older sister were there, and they were playing with my other siblings, and I was really excited, and I told them what had happened, and my brother-in-law was like, as I'm telling him this, he starts laughing, going, yeah, right, and I'm not one running around telling tales about this kind of stuff. I mean, I knew they knew my interest in the subject, but, he was being a real jackass, and I just pretty much told him to go fuck himself, and went upstairs, and just really didn't say much about it after that. Didn't forget it, but didn't talk about it.
Do you remember the quality of the light? Was it a flashlight light, twinkle star kind of light, airplane light? What kind of quality it was?
I think it was it looked like a solid white light to me, with maybe like a little bit, the lights, it looked, when I first saw it looked like part of the street light. But it wasn't like, again, this is 79, so I'm not sure if the light quality, the lights have changed since then, but it looked like a white light with a slight yellow around the diameter of it.
Okay, so not fiery in any way and not twinkling.
No, it seemed pretty solid. That's what confused me, I think. Or I was just confused just confused. And when it moved, it confused me. So,
very good. And then in 1989, we skip ahead 10 years, and we're right back to another near-death intervention, this time your own.
I was driving to work in Huntington, Long Island. I was going past the Walt Whitman Mall, and the Walt Whitman Mall has like the median strip, and they have these like segments where cars can shoot over and get into the mall. And I was driving there, and I was in the left-hand lane. There was 2 lanes, and a car came out of nowhere and just decided to shoot across. And I don't know how. I wasn't even sure if there was a car next to me, but I managed to get around this car. But in doing so, and I know this could be all in terms of adrenaline, when something like that occurs, you're like, you're just totally, I don't know, fight or flight or just whatever, just respond. A mist or something seemed to be around the car, and I had everything slowed down, and I know with adrenaline that can occur. But I had this pressure in my head, and the car wasn't coming like, it was, again, this car came broadside. It was going to hit me broadside in the driver's side of the car. And I jerked the wheel really quick, like, I don't know how you'd call it, just like up and to the right, to the right really quick, zoom like this. And I don't know how I managed to get by that car. And again, I could have just been lucky. My reflexes were much better back then. Even though I was notable, most of my friends thought I was a pretty crappy driver. But and then as soon as I got out of it, and during this time, this mist or whatever was occurring, and it happened so quickly too. But then, I was back where I was supposed to be. I was on the road, on the thing, and I was okay, but I know this might have to do with adrenaline too, because it happened so quick and it was so primal. I just let out this incredible yell. I was just like, and I normally don't do that. I was like, I just like, went kind of nuts there for a couple of seconds, and then just, was shaking so bad, and I just calmed down and went, okay, you're okay, we're okay. I was almost at work anyway, and I went to work. I went and did my job. I told people about the accident, but I didn't tell them about the mist and the pressure in my head.
Well, you said, again, I felt this pressure in my forehead like I was being sucked through the windshield.
Right.
How do you get that simile?
Pardon?
How do you get that? I mean, I felt this pressure in my forehead, as if I was being sucked through the windshield. Like, how does one equal the other? That's confusing to me.
Believe me, it was confusing to me too. I don't know. I just felt like I was
like your soul was going to come out of your body and go through the windshield. Is that what you're conveying?
I guess that's what it'd be like. It felt like I literally was going to go out of my body, but it felt more physical than that. And and I had my seatbelt on and everything, so I know it felt like I was being lunged forward. Really, I just felt like this weird pressure in my forehead, and just again, and it was a sunny day and everything like that. So I was looking around, thinking, where's this mist? Later on, I'm going, where's this mist coming from? I don't know and understand this. It was almost like a fog bank kind of thing. But it was a sunny day, so I just don't understand. Could it have been exhaust fumes from other cars? I don't know. I don't think so. I mean, it was quite a bit of it. And again, with the adrenaline, I know things tend to go in slow motion, and it really seemed, even though I know it was quick, it seemed to go very slow in a weird way. And so, again, I could have just got lucky.
Well, I've had an experience like that driving where it, I just took my eyes off the road for a second, and I looked back, and the car, the truck in front of me had stopped. It had a ladder coming off of it that should have gone through the windshield and decapitated me, but I turned the wheel, and I swear to God, the car did a 90-degree turn. I mean, there was no way that, it went like 90-degree turn and then straight ahead onto the shoulder. I mean, I should have easily either hit the truck or that thing should have gone through the windshield. I mean, it was inches away from the windshield. It just wasn't, and I was speeding toward a stopped object, it was just an impossible maneuver, and somehow that happened. So I can relate that way. In 1991, your dad's passed away. Before he died, he's given the gift of clarity and knowing that this was it for him. And you're depressed for several months, have an intense dream that snapped you out of the depression. So what was the dream about?
The dream, can I just talk about a little bit about when he,
Sure. Yeah.
about his passing? And I know you guys have talked about this. I know Jeff's grandfather had this happen where you had this thing where, my dad had been suffering from type 2 diabetes, arterial sclerosis, and they couldn't even operate on his heart anymore. They said, we can't even operate on you because if we do, you're just going to die on the table. Again, this was back in 91. I'm sure they have a lot more advanced stuff now, but, he just wasn't a good candidate for that kind of operation. And he was having really hard memory problems. You just didn't know, like he'd ask me the same question every couple of minutes, like, what time is it? Where's your mother? And that kind of stuff. So when he was in the hospital this last time, he was, I don't know, and I was away. I was living somewhere else. I wasn't on the island. I was living in New Hampshire. And we had decided that, well, he can't climb the stairs anymore, so we're going to have to move all the furniture down from upstairs to downstairs to make a bedroom for him and my mom, so he wouldn't have to, deal with the stairs. Because he also had lost a leg. He had a prosthetic, and it was difficult for him to get upstairs. Anyway, my mom called me and said, can you come help us move the furniture? So I wanted to come and see him anyway, and they said, we're going to move the furniture down. So we did. No, we were going to, and, it was sort of set. And she says, your dad's doing really good. I don't know what's going on with him. And so I got there, and he was as sharp as a tack. He was like his old self again, and he was extremely lucid, knew everybody's name, and he had been losing his name. He didn't recognize people who were his fellow coworkers who came in to visit him, at the time before that, his eyesight was also going too, because he's, again, type 2 diabetes. He'd say to me sometimes, who was that guy who came in? And I said, well, that was someone who used to work for you. But he recognized everyone. He was extremely jovial and happy, and it was amazing. But he kept saying to us, please don't move furniture. Don't move the furniture. It's not necessary. And we'd thinking that, he's feeling better, he's able to get upstairs and stuff. But in hindsight, I think that he just knew that, and again, that's speculation on my part, that it was it. And he was gone the next day. He had a massive MI. He was actually laughing at the time when it happened, which is, I guess if you're going to go either in your sleep or laughing is not bad.
Right.
But anyway, after that, I had a dream. After that occurred, I was pretty, like all of our family members were pretty upset. And I had this dream. It was about, again, I couldn't see to snap myself out of this funk about him, because I wish I had been there with him, hadn't moved or anything. But the dream was him and my brother and me were driving in the car like we used to do when I was a kid. We always used to be in a car. It was sort of like my brother and myself, my dad's responsibility to go grocery shopping like once a week, because we had come from a huge family, and it was like a big deal. You needed like, a big truck to bring people, to bring the groceries back. But anyway, we were driving around like we used to in the old days, and we were just happy, and I'm saying, how are you, and everything like that. And he just turned to me and said, I'm okay, right? And I just lost it. I was laughing, I woke up laughing and crying at the same time, and it just felt like this huge thing had been lifted from my spirit. I just felt so much better, and it was so real. And I don't have many dreams that I remember, and most of my dreams are rather goofy. Personally, I don't know. I don't have very vivid dreams, but this one was so intense. I just felt it just lifted my spirit and helped me get out of that funk and just continue.
And continue you do into 1993, which you call a sleep paralysis event in Derry, New Hampshire. But I find it interesting that this actually smacks of Jeff's "Are you sure?" type of thing.
Yeah, that was really weird. And again, I've been reading a lot of books, and I could just say, hey, it's, again, you're looking for it, and then, there it is, listening for the bump in the night. But this was the weirdest thing. I've never had this happen before or since. When I was actually reading a book, and I thought it was Dr. Mack's book, but his first book, but it wasn't, because it hadn't been out. It wasn't out yet, I don't think. I believe it was one of Dr. Valley's books. I think it was Dimensions. But anyway, I woke up in the middle of the night, and my head was pinned to my chest. It was like down into the right, like this, like a locked position. And I was like sort of on my side, my right side, and I was like, I couldn't move. And I was starting, I opened my eyes. I didn't even think I opened my eyes. My eyes weren't open. I couldn't open my eyes. And I felt like this electricity going through me. It was really strange. And I felt this, again, they say you feel, with sleep paralysis, you feel the presence in the room, but it really felt like there was somebody there. And I know in the past I had said, I wish I could have this kind of experience. I wish I could have, because I didn't like any might like the thing with the little elf guy or anything with this kind of subject. I just, I didn't know what that was. But again, I felt this presence in the room. I didn't see anything because I had my eyes shut. I didn't want to open them. And I felt this feeling in my body saying, is this what you really want? Is this the kind of thing you really want to enjoy? Well, here it is. And I was like, in my head, I'm going, I don't want this. I don't want this. Just please go away. And, I take it back kind of thing. And I just sort of just tried to relax. But I was having a really hard time to do because every time I tried to move or anything, it just felt like a jolt of electricity. And so it lasted probably about I'm guessing 5 minutes. And then it just slowly, the presence disappeared, and then it just slowly subsided, and I was able to lift my neck up. I had really bad, my neck muscles were really sore for a couple of days after that. And I was just like, holy shit, what is that? And so I pretty much took a lot of my books and stuff and either put them in a box or put them away and just said, I'm going to read something else a little more, uplifting, like The Hobbit and Lord of the Rings or something else to, just to get my mind off of it.
At this point, are you in your life, are you making connections between all of these things?
No, not really. No,
okay.
I guess not.
Can I just interject here for a second?
Sure.
I guess it bears mentioning here that you had mentioned, Jeremy, something about the "Are you sure?" kind of thing, and I think the most in your face version of that, which nobody really knows about because I haven't talked about it, and I still won't talk about it, but the most pertinent version of that happened in Derry, New Hampshire.
Oh, geez.
Huh.
Yikes.
Yeah. So that's something that we'll have to talk about after the show, Hermitage. Just a little.
Wow.
Well, in the meantime, thanks for tantalizing everybody with that, Jeff. And now they don't get to hear it.
That's right.
In 1996, on the 4th of July, while the rest of us were watching fireworks, you were having an I am experience, which actually sounds more akin to something that Jeff had experienced than the version that I went through. But let's hear it.
Yeah, I called it the mini I am experience because I don't know everybody's perception is different. But anyway, I was living, I guess, pretty much in chaos, I guess, at the time, because due to the temporary breakup of my love and my wife now, we had sort of a falling out. I don't know if it's the right word. That isn't even it. She wanted to go back and try to work on a relationship that she had previously, and I was just freaking devastated. Because I thought, well, this is it, isn't it? And this is, and so pretty much I spent most of going through every emotion, anger, whatever, the 5 stages of whatever. I don't know if there's a 5 stages of relationships, like dying, but it felt like I was dying.
Which one is block them out with an HD TV and surround sound? Is that one of the steps? Just curious.
However it worked, I guess. I don't know. But I just pretty much, I was doing some weird things then. I was just like up all hours of the night. I would run in the dark. I was a runner back then before my hip gave out. But I would run literally in the dark, not with any reflective gear on, which I normally do. But, and back, thinking back, I'm going, what, if someone had hit me, just to put me out of my misery, that would have been a really crummy thing to do to them, unless they wanted to. But I just, it's like, I was really feeling kind of like, suicidal, I guess, in one way. So I was just sort of poking at danger in the way. I'm just going to run at night in the dark, wearing black, and see what happens. And, but again, if I wasn't doing that, I was pretty much weeping. I was just, just draining every emotion out of my body. And I pretty much got myself to a point one time. I was just, this is probably like in a week's time. I was so exhausted from every emotion, roller coaster ride. I was just pretty much laying on the floor and had no, I had nothing left in me. I just felt totally spent of every drop of energy. And then all of a sudden, I was like out of my body, for lack of a better term. But I wasn't like floating around. I was like literally sitting on top of my own shoulder. It was a very strange experience. It was just very strange. It was just like sort of sitting, me next to me, sitting like I think I go liken it to Jiminy Cricket sitting on your shoulder with Pinocchio, and all of a sudden I just felt, I don't know if it's called separating yourself from the situation. I don't know what, but it was just, I just felt elated. I just totally felt ecstatic and incredible, and I just started, and everything took on this glitter and shine that I, hadn't seen in a while. I was feeling very euphoric, and I started walking down the street. I got up and just started walking down the road. And again, this is in Exeter, New Hampshire, another New Hampshire tourist spot. And I just would go up to people, not like crazily, but just say, "Hi, how are you?" And isn't it beautiful out? And I just felt so elated. And I normally don't do, I'll just walk by somebody. I go, "Hi, how you doing?" But and I started walking down past a loaf and ladle, and there's a bridge down there. I don't know if you've seen the bridge down there where the water is. There's waterfowl and everything there. And I was just hanging out there, just staring intently at the water, the heron. There was a heron sitting on a rock, just being very still and patient, waiting for the right moment to catch the fish. And I just felt so connected to it. I felt like I was the heron, I was the rock, I was the water, I was the fish. And I just felt so connected to everything. It was just this amazing experience. And it had to have lasted several hours, and it was just something I'll never forget. It was just so intense and just so awesome. It just changed my perspective on so many things, and it really helped me, just for lack of a better term.
Well, let me just ask you about that. Did it permanently change you? I mean, do you, especially religiously, I guess, maybe even, anything permanent, or was it just for years or days?
I was never, come like 17, 18, I stopped going to church regularly, and I'm not a practicing Catholic or anything like that. I'm not, again, people say I'm a spiritual person, but that's pretty much what I am. I'm more connected with nature now than anything else, and I've always been. That was one of the great memories of my life with my dad, is we always had a affinity. We were always watching the wildlife programs, whether it was Mutual of Omaha or Long Green Blast of the Wild or Marty Stover's Wild America or whatever. That's just something that we always loved to do together, just watch the nature programs. And that's pretty much where I am now, and that's where I was then too. And that's
have you kept all of this stuff that we're talking about just sort of in the background? I mean, even though you study this stuff, when you read, for instance, Jacques Vallée's book, I mean, are you reading Jacques Vallée's books or any of this stuff with the obsessive passion of someone who is trying to figure out their own life, or are you just reading it and at the same time this other stuff is happening and you're not really deeply into it for your own personal reasons? Which would you say best describes you?
To be honest with you, I never really made connections to the things that have occurred to me and with the phenomenon. I just thought they were just odd things. Again, I was always been like, with the UFO thing, or any books I read, the nuts and bolts kind of things. And then, and then I remember reading Communion, and I was like, this is too freaking weird for me. I don't understand this. I mean, I enjoyed the book, but I was like, it freaking creeped me out, to be honest with you. I mean, it was like, this isn't, this is not nuts and bolts. This is not, trace evidence. This is not the government's hiding this kind of thing. It was just weird. I didn't make the connection.
See, because the case I want to make here, Jeff, stop me at any moment, is that maybe we're going about this the wrong way. If we had just let this remain as background static in our lives, it would have preserved and influenced us in ways, and we could have just gone through life and been relatively normal and happy. Instead, we had to try to confront it and say, what are you? And then you get into this, mazes and monsters routine of, this is what I am, this is what I am, this is what I am. But it seems like this thing, if there really is one phenomenon acting out in different ways, it seems like it's appealing to your Catholic sensibilities, to your ufological readings, to all of these different things. But because you're not really paying attention to it obsessively, trying to figure yourself out, it can just work on you in the background unconsciously. You're not focused on it, and it's not playing that game with you. You think that's fair to say, Jeff?
Yeah, but I think the other half of it is that Jacques Vallée's books are not light reading. And I don't think that, and this is the way I've always viewed this stuff. It's like shit don't stink till you stir it, number one. But I don't think anyone gets into somebody like Jacques Vallée's work in passing. You clearly see in his books that there's something bigger going on and something more complex going on than, as Hermitage said, the nuts, the bolts, the landing trace cases and such. There's more to this. And I think anytime anybody kind of stirs that pot and says there's something else here, I think that's the part when it goes, oh, really? Oh, well, here you are. I mean, I'm fascinated by the fact that you see a toilet elf and your favorite book of the time was to do with elves. I mean, that speaks to me right there as, okay, so it's showing you, if it was Winnie the Pooh, would you have seen Winnie the Pooh? If it was, take your pick.
Well, that's right. And then he starts going into UFOs and talking to his family about UFOs, and then they start seeing UFOs.
And then it starts to become that, right?
But what we talk about is, perhaps this is a lore, and whoever tugs on it, then you end up in the feedback loop. But what if it is that, but it doesn't just go away if you don't tug on it? It stays there perpetually. In other words, if you had disregarded the first 9 years of your life that ended in that giant clap, by the quote-unquote alien in your face, it wouldn't have gone. The phenomenon wouldn't have gone away. It would have just been background noise, much the way it is here in his life, still influencing you subtly, just not overtly.
Yeah. I think it. I think I did effectively ignore that as an interest, as in I've got to figure out what that is. I mean, when you're 10 years old, 9 years old, you don't really have the facilities to be able to figure out things like that. So I did leave that in that spot, but I also had weird shit in between that then when I did figure out, and I did make this connection to say, is that what this is? Is that what this is all about? And I have seen this. And then, of course, doing what Lee said, making the list of life. What's every weird thing you can ever remember? That was when it kind of smacked me. And that is at that point when the floodgates broke loose and your life turns into a 3-ring circus. I can't say as I've ever had so much in-your-face activity in my life as that period of, I don't know, 7 to 10 years, somewhere in there, something like that. I don't think it leaves you alone. I think I'll put it this way. Everybody has a story. I think if you walked up to Joe Blow on the street and said, what's the weirdest thing that's ever happened to you? I think if everyone were to treat this honestly and not be afraid of being ridiculed for weird stuff, I think everyone has a story like this, and perhaps several.
I totally agree.
I mean, this is what I've said for better part of 10 years. I think that this whole thing is like that. Like, the big question with contact experiences and individual people is, well, why you or why me? That it's asked from both directions, and maybe it's not a why you or why me. Maybe it's everybody. It just depends on how one interacts with that and how it challenges it. And if you grab hold of the life ring that it throws you, well, then hold the fuck on. But if not, it doesn't mean that it leaves you. It just means that in some way, like you're saying, Jared, it subtly affects something in you. Even if it's an interpersonal thing that you only discuss with yourself in very sparse and unroutine ways, it still has you thinking.
Well, and I also wonder if it's, part of that isn't so that one day you may just wake up and realize, oh, wait a minute, is this all a pattern? And then engage it. You know what I mean? Like, is it always perpetually there influencing you, just waiting for you to wake up and engage it consciously? Because Hermitage, your 1996 experience, this I am experience, is your identification with the wildlife around you. And then in 1999, not coincidentally, I don't think, is your next experience. And it has to do with you sort of reading signs into nature. So why don't you give us that one?
Sure. My wife and I had moved to Oregon to be with her dad, who was really sick. He had been a fireman in Boston or Wilmington. Well, both. He was a fireman in both places. And he had gotten heart damage from many years of smoke inhalation and crap like that. And he was out in Oregon. He had become a chicken farmer out in Oregon. And he wasn't doing well, so we wanted to be near him. And he's actually starting to improve. When we moved out there, it was a crazy trip. But we got out there, and we were going to go out to dinner. It was like 3 or 4 weeks after we had moved there. We were going to go out to dinner because it was his second wife's birthday. So we were going to go and celebrate. And when we were that day before we went to the restaurant, we had come back from the grocery store, and there was this hummingbird was following our car into the driveway. And it was really, at first I thought it was a bee, and my wife, it's like, it's a hummingbird. She loves hummers. She's, we both do. We have feeders and everything. And
I love hummers
we
too.
didn't have one back.
I'm sorry, I'll take that.
So the hummingbird was behind the car, just hovering behind the car behind us. And so I'd never seen that before. So we got out of the car, and the hummingbird came up to my wife and just stood in front of her for like 10 minutes and wouldn't go away. Not that we wanted to go away, but I've never seen a hummingbird do that before. Unless you're like a flower or a nectar or something like that. So it was just weird that it just stayed there and stayed there. And eventually we just said, well, we got to get inside. We got to get ready to go. And we went out for happy time, and it just ended in disaster when my father-in-law he coded there in the middle of the restaurant, and we tried doing, we're both medical people. We were doing CPR until the EMTs arrived, and they took forever to get there. But I think he was gone before he hit the floor. He had been so sick that whole winter before. But anyway, after that it occurred. A couple of days later, my wife felt a strong presence of him by our front door, and she just, I didn't even know what was going on. She just bolted past me and threw the door open and just felt him and just started crying, and then it dissipated after a minute or so. It was just, it was a really strange event, but I think in a way it really did comfort her that she felt him, and even though it was, terribly sad, and I just thought that we felt that, I guess the Hummer was her mother's favorite bird too, and so we thought maybe it was a harbinger in some way, her mom coming back in that way to sort of let us know something was going on. I mean, we could totally be reading into that, but it was just kind of odd that occurred, and then like a couple hours later this occurred. I guess,
Yeah.
we just thought it was strange.
Well, the sort of story that I'm forming in my head here, whether true or not, is you've got this influence in the back of your life. It's this unconscious influence, much like we talk about on the show, that goes, oh, you're thinking this way? Well, I'll show you this. Oh, you're thinking this way? Oh, I'll show you this. So you go from Catholicism and guardian angels to UFOs to this I am identity experience, which then leads you to read signs in nature. And if you were to ever wake up one day and realize that there was that pattern of something presenting things in your life, experiences in your life that change you from whatever perspective, you have. Oh, you think it's this? I'll show you this. If you woke up and realized that, would that set you on the path of sort of the more mystical journey where you'd be like, what the hell? All right, record scratch. What is this that is influencing me unconsciously? And then would something actually come out of the dark in a a more obvious way and abduct you or have a conversation with you or whatever it is, however that manifests? I just wonder if that's...
I'll take the conversation.
Yeah, well, wouldn't we all?
If I get a choice, right? No, I don't know. I mean, I honestly don't know. That could be. I guess that's maybe why a lot of people just put the thing back in their mind. They go, well, what's that going to do in this reality right now? What's that going to do for me? Is it just going to make me an outcast? Is it just going to make me not be able to cope with this level of existence? Possibly. It's weird when you have responsibilities, raising a family and doing stuff like that.
I don't know anything about that.
It's fun.
I have no responsibilities. I have no family.
Well, you have a family of origin, but anyway, I know I don't know. Quite possibly. I mean, anything's possible. I think the older I get, the more I just feel anything is possible if we all just woke the fuck up. And I guess maybe that's what you're referring to.
Well, now this is interesting because in 2001 is the next thing, and it's a dream event, right? And so one wonders,
yes,
will this twist into other dream events from here on out? I don't know. But anyway, what is the dream event?
The dream event is that my wife, the day before 9/11, it's her birthday, and we decided to go. We were visiting from Oregon, actually, because we were going for my niece's wedding there on the East Coast. So we flew to Oregon, from Oregon back to the East Coast, and we were staying with my stepdaughter, and we decided to go to the city to see, to go to we were going to go, I think, to the World Trade Center at first, but we never got there. We actually we went up on the Empire State Building, instead, and we could see the World Trade Center across, obviously, but it was kind of weird because it was a weird, wild day. I mean, the weather was crazy, and the Twin Towers actually partially engulfed in mist or fog or something. I know there was some kind of storm, as I recall. This was late in the day. This is like when at the end of the day, they closed the top of the Empire State Building off. That people have to go back down. But it was really weird. We had a good day and everything. But the next morning, my wife woke up, and actually, her son was living in the city at the time, and she woke up with this crazy dream. She said, I had a dream of my son sitting on top of this weird elephant-like billowy thing, racing down the street like in between the buildings, like going down the street. But she likened it to it wasn't an elephant. I said, it was an elephant? I was, because she was trying to explain it to me. She goes, no, it wasn't an elephant. It looked like an elephant, but it was like this weird thing coming down the street, and he was riding on top of it. And I just thought, that's strange. And so we had driven back to Connecticut because that's where Dora lives, and we were dropping her off at work, and we went to a diner, and that's when we had heard somebody at the diner, the TV was on, and said, plane just hit the World Trade Center. And we're like, what? And and we were in shock like everybody else, and we didn't know what to do. We couldn't fly back to Oregon because the airports and everything were closed. So we got a hotel room, and we were sitting in the hotel room, and I was in the bathroom again, and I heard her, she was watching the film, this was hours later, and they kept replaying it over and over again. But she started crying, and I thought she was crying, obviously, for that. She started shaking her head, go, this is my dream, and I'm going, what do you mean? And when they showed the big cloud, the big plume coming down in between the buildings and the people running, I mean, not that the people who were running were in the dream, but that billowing thing coming down in between the buildings, she said, this is my dream. And at first, again, I wasn't quite understanding what she was talking about. I sort of forgot about the dream, when everything else sort of hit, and I was just dumbfounded. And so I thought it was maybe some kind of precognition of, almost like a remote viewing thing where it's not exactly, it's not like the exact thing, but it's something very similar to that. That's it.
And that was the last experience in your family?
Yeah, well, there were other things, but I'd really rather not talk about those. And if they were to do with me, I would gladly talk about them, but I don't have permission to talk about other things, with other people. And again, that's why I want to be anonymous. I'd rather, sort of leave it at that. I had a couple of dreams just recently, though. They were to do with me, my wife, and my grandson. And it was very strange dream. It was a good dream, though. It was, at first, it seemed like it was like the end of the world kind of scenario. And me, my wife, and my grandson were on a plane and flying, and there was this guy, that actor, that movie Borat?
Yeah, Sacha Baron Cohen.
Yeah, right. The guy, him, is there, but he's got these googly glasses on, like giant Coke bottle glasses on, and he's spouting all this crazy shit that, we're all gonna die, and you're gonna, we're all gonna, it's a big, ball of fire, and everyone's going to hell, and whatever. And my grandson, who doesn't talk yet because he's only, he's starting to talk now, but this happened a couple months ago. My grandson actually starts talking in the dream, and he's just saying, you're a liar, and you don't know what you're talking about, and I feel sorry for you. And I can't exactly know what he was saying, but he was saying things that are just, again, so profound that, for a little kid to be saying, and again, of course, it's a dream, but I just had this overwhelming thing of just peace, as fucked up as things are, that I think if we get our acts together, we'll be okay. And it's not going to come from a freaking, ship in the sky. It's just going to come from all of us together.
Says you.
That's pretty much it. Yeah. or it could be,
What's
full
funny?
of prunes. I don't know.
As we're talking here, trending right now on Twitter is UFO sightings. For some reason, that's trending on Twitter. So I clicked on the Yahoo link, and like half the stories are about UFOs in Hawaii. What's that about?
Well, see ya, Jer.
Did I miss something? Well, Hermitage, thank you very much for coming on the show and sharing your experiences, and look forward to the next hour where Jeff and I talk about you behind your back.
That's right.
I'm looking forward to it.
Awesome.
I just, I guys, before I go, I just want to thank you guys. And I know it sounds like, blowing smoke, but I just want to say that I really appreciate what you guys do week in and week out. And I'm sure, again, Jeff, I'm sure you've said it many times. I just, I'd like to pack up and leave and just, live your life and just concentrate on your music, your crafts, craftsmanship or your guitar building and everything else. And I just appreciate what you guys do. And you really opened my eyes in a lot of ways and in different directions that I didn't really think about truly until I started listening to the show. But I just want to say thanks.
That's great. Thank you.
Thank you.
This is Scott Crownover, and you're listening to Paratopia.
Thanks.
Perfect.
So the Jeff.
So the Jer.
Hermitage, eh?
Hermitage.
Well, we've said it before and we'll say it again. How many times do we have to say it? There it is. That's
there indeed it is, yes.
Form follows cultural contamination, or whatever the heck's on your mind at the time.
Right.
Interesting that a lot of it wasn't him directly involved, though.
Yeah, but tangent people to him,
Tangent people to him, and you could make the case, I will make the case, yes, that through whatever he's interested in at the time and sharing with them, that is influencing their experiences.
Yeah, which would, which almost says to me that just say you were living here and things were going on here that we were experiencing, that means you would see them too. So that means they're decidedly external, and that in that respect, at least to me, that says to me that there's something external that even if the wife isn't thinking about, just for instance, hummingbirds and her dad, if I understood that right, that was his father-in-law, correct?
Yeah.
So, that just immediately speaks to me that whatever he might be like ultimately, is he the agent of the paranormal manifestations? We always have an agent component to this kind of thing, or at least there seems to be. And so if that's the case, is he manifesting also for people around him? I don't know, just curious thought.
I was just at Maz Kava talking to Dad Kava, or Phil, as I like to call him, and some other people in there. And one of the other guys, Phil had asked me if I've ever heard of animal-human hybridization, if we ever cover this on the show. And I said, no, not really. Maybe the chupacabra, we haven't really talked about any of it, but that's the thing we're most familiar with, if that's what you're talking about. And he didn't know what the chupacabra was, but the other guy in there was all too familiar with it. And he said, oh, yeah. All up and down the Southwest and all into Brazil and Argentina and all this. And he said, what's funny is the way that it's evolved. People talk about it in terms of it being a half human, half alien looking thing, or half dog, half, flying dog kind of thing. And he said that was the original, as far as he knew, the original reportings of this, or not even reportings, the original old wives' tale of this was of a flying dog type thing, and that it was said in Latino cultures as a way of keeping kids inside. Like, oh, you better come in before the sun goes down or the chupacabra is going to get you.
Right.
You know, so it was this completely folkloric, mythical thing that then people started reporting seeing.
Yeah.
Does that jive with your memory of it? Because to me, that again is, oh, well, there you go. And now we'll never know if there was really a chupacabra or not. We'll never know if there was really fairy folk or not. We'll never know if there was really an elf in the toilet or not. We'll never know.
Right. Right. I don't know if that jives with my memory or not, because I don't ever remember hearing it until they were actually having sightings of it. So I don't know that there was some kind of fourth story to that to do that. I don't know. Although I will say everything that I've seen about it, every acclaimed body that's been shown has been something else, you know. And we had a thing in Maryland not long ago. They called it the Hell Hun, because Hun is the Baltimore thing. And so at least when I saw it actually twice in my parents' neighborhood, it looked like it had the head of a jackal, almost like a very muscular face, very large head, and very skinny body. And it was largely hairless. And people were seeing this and nobody believed them until some footage showed up in the news. And then all of a sudden, you got all sorts of animal people saying, well, this is obviously a fox and or some kind of wild dog that is manged. And it turned out that that's exactly what it was. But that almost had like I could see that taking on the same kind of thing as a chupacabra. You know, like the chupacabra was never really all that defined as to what it looked like. And like the man told you, I've seen chupacabra look like an alien with spikes on its head. Like, what is that? Where did that even come from? If there was some kind of folklore beforehand, I could see that being the folklore. But I mean, will we ever know if there is one? Well, we haven't got one yet, so it kind of takes on the same quality as Bigfoot for me. Like, is it real or is it not? I have no idea at all.
I find Hermitage to be an anomaly in a way, because as I look back over his testimony and as I reflect upon listening to it, he's got these things that he's written as perhaps this is sleep paralysis. And then, you know, you get the story of the thing saying, are you sure? You know, you sure that's what you really want? You really want to move? And then he didn't want to move after that. Or you've got this could be Earth lights, and then it's a light that's following a trajectory and then goes back over its path and seems to be, you know, following the car and all of this.
Right.
And I look at these things, I mean, those are the just sort of innocuous things to him. Those are the things that could be something or couldn't be something. And then you've got the things that definitely are something, you know, the time freezes and he's the only one moving and no one else will move. Or missing time type experiences that he or his family, I guess maybe his sisters, don't want to explore. I just find all of that not wanting to explore it, not delving into it, an anomaly, because it seems like it's so thick in his life. And I know that these are just, you know, 12 or 13 experiences that he's had, but they seem like they would be pretty profound or pretty significant enough to warrant the type of scrutiny that has plagued you and I for our entire lives.
Yeah.
I mean, just having the room freeze and you're walking around going, shaking people, you know, wake up, wake up. I mean, and having just sort of that memory with nothing else attached to it, that alone would put me on a lifetime mission of finding out what the hell reality is about.
It's fucking 1 a.m. Really? You don't hear that?
I do hear that, actually. I thought that was outdoors because I have the window open.
Christ. Well, I guess I would assume that he's probably like a lot of people in that you do try to rationalize it away. I mean, you do try to find some kind of rational explanation for it. And it almost comes down to that, you know, when you were asking him, you know, did you connect it at this point to something paranormal? Did you ever kind of make that connection and say, oh, this is what this is? And I noticed that throughout most of his accounts there that he had said no. And I think that's that speaks to me as a very real reaction to this, and that you do try to either say, well, it's just one of those things. We've all heard people say that. You will try to rationalize it. I mean, that is what happens. That is what people normally do.
You would think somebody reading Jacques Vallée, though, would...
Again, yeah. I mean, that's the kind of thing that makes you sit up and say, if you're reading Vallée, then obviously you're a little deeper into it than the average, I would say, UFO or paranormally interested person would be. That's heavy reading for, even though he's a great author and he fully explains things the right way, and it is an easy read. It's very heady stuff. So at that point, you have to wonder if subconsciously they're not looking for something in that, in that wellspring of all this information that's out there on this stuff. So, people ask me the same thing. Well, were you into this from a young age? And I was like, yeah, I thought UFOs were interesting. I watched In Search Of, and I saw these things, but that never made a connection to me that was anything at all that had to do with anything that had gone on with me. In fact, I never equated anything like that. I mean, for the life of me, sitting here, I mean, it's been so many years now, I can't even remember what I attributed, just say, the night stuff as a young child to. I don't remember, other than saying, like, when a weird topic would come up in conversation with somebody close, like a girlfriend or my mom or my dad or a really close friend, I would say, they would say something about a ghost, or they would say something about, what do you think about this? Some kind of way out subject. And I'd bring that up and I'd say, I had this when I was a kid. I mean, what could that possibly have been? And, nobody ever gave me a straight answer. Nobody ever said what that meant. So I never attributed it to anything. And it wasn't until I got smacked in the face, numerous times with, communion and then hearing people talk about similar experiences on TV that weren't quite right, but were enough for me to make that connection and go, is that what that is? Well,
now that you've said that, I think I've just figured it out, because he also said that he had read Communion and he thought it was scary and that it wasn't nuts and bolts enough, so it didn't make sense to him.
Right.
So I wonder if he's looking at the UFO phenomena as purely the UFO phenomena, then yeah, you wouldn't put Toilet Elf or Guardian Angels or any sort of other thing in there with it. Why would you? And if you're reading Jacques Vallée, probably Dimensions he mentioned, I think. I mean, probably depends on what book you're reading. Like if he had read Passport to Magonia, that might have been a done deal. But
right.
So I don't know. I find that interesting in respect of, does this phenomena have that sort of, I want to say, holistic quality to it, or depth quality to it, that, say, religion does, or, say, reading books does. You read a book, there's the surface level story, and then if you're a little wiser, you understand the subtext. If you understand the history of the times, maybe you get the historical references. However deep you are is what you drag out of that book. And is it the same here? However deeply you're willing to go with this phenomenon, once it's jingled its chains at you, that's where you're going to go. At this point in his life, could he start to see it all as of a pattern and then wake up out of that pattern, much like waking up out of the surface level of reading a story or of reading the Bible or something? You sort of go, well, wait a minute, that doesn't quite work as a literal tale. So what else could this be? Oh, a parable. Oh, well, that only works so far. What else could this be? If you start doing that, will it manifest as something that is now addressing you in a different way?
Yeah.
Hermitage, do the experiment. Ruin your life. I mean, go.
The thing that makes me wonder, or the thing that I ponder the most, and I really need to start reading some good objective books about, is something like Fatima, where you've got, you've not only got these amazing visions that were seen by multitudes of people. I mean, that right there alone just makes me go, okay, so what was that about? If we're gonna say that something's manifesting, is it the collective of all of those gathered people in that spot that made that visionary experience happen of the sun dancing around the sky and becoming this big disk and all of that sort of thing? Or are we just, I mean, can we really rationalize that down to a classic or historical UFO sighting of some sort? That
No, you can't. Do you want me to hang up the phone? You can't.
Right. I mean, is that what that is? I mean, and you know, the Marian prophecies that were then, you know, obviously taken to heart by the Vatican and were sealed away for years and all of that. I mean, I find all of that really interesting. And the fact that, you know, it was 3 kids and only one of them really survived much past, you know, one of them, of course, became a nun and lived to old age, but most, you know, the other 2 did not. I mean, something like that really makes you ponder, like, okay, what was that all about? I don't know. I mean,
and you know what? The George Hansen in me, which is located near the throat where the bow tie should be, wonders what was going on in Portugal at the time.
Yeah, that's exactly what I'm saying. Is
what happened after? Did it change the politics of the region? Did it change? You know, what did it change? What did it affect? Anything?
Yeah, the surrounding things is what's important, which is why I say you've got to read some kind of book that's a, you know, purely objective. If you can find such a book like that, one that isn't tainted by, well, this is my religious belief, and so therefore it's this, and it means that, and so on and so forth. I don't want a book like that. So if anybody knows one about the Fatima thing, I would dearly love to know of a really good book that doesn't approach it from that direction.
See, this is something where we see Rich Dolan on the History Channel and whatever other channel, and now he's pretty much doing anything. It's not just UFO-related stuff. He'll just be on any old thing. Since he's a historian, he should be the one doing this type of research, and then he could like legitimately go on those shows about Fatima and about whatever else and report his findings. I think that would be a great use of his talents.
Yeah. Yeah. Not what was it? Real Fear? Not Real Fear. Talking about the Amityville house and, yeah. Well, I mean, it's a living, right?
That it is.
So I don't know. I mean, I'd be really curious about something like that, because that's always every book that I've ever picked up about that event or any of the Marian apparition things, even the one associated with the miraculous metal. You know, I've wondered, like, okay, so what is the fly on the wall story here? You know, and what surrounded it? I mean, is there even such a book as that, or is everything written from? I mean, natural. If you're going to write a book about Marian apparitions, are you going to write it from a non-religious standpoint? I don't know that that's ever been done, really. But yeah, you bring up jokingly that past guest of ours. I mean, to me, when I read the bare account of what it looked like to me an unidentified flying object thing. I don't know. I know Jacques. When I listened to him on another show, if I understood him correctly, I don't think that he saw much to it. At least at the time he gave the interview. He said, you know, I've been to that site several times, and at certain times of the year, the sky can look extremely bizarre there. Opalescent, I think he said at some point. So, I don't know. That's one of those things. I mean, there's been a couple of big paranormal events that have come up that have been seen by multitudes of people, and let's disregard for the moment. Disregard the Mexican wave that started way back when we had the solar eclipse down there. I mean, if you ignore that one, which was seen by a hell of a lot of people, and people continue to see UFOs down there, but I'm talking like a major event like Fatima. I really can't even think of it. I mean, maybe the Hudson Valley UFO sightings that was seen by a lot of people, but not
Gulf Breeze is the closest because it came and went, you know.
Yeah, Gulf Breeze would be probably a good one, although not seen by nearly as many people. I think Fatima pretty much takes the cake as far as multiple witnesses goes. I don't know of anything else besides that's, you know, that you're talking about Wasn't it thousands of people that were gathered there at one point and saw this? I mean, and even non-believing people gathered there to see this and saw it. I mean, that is a mind blower to me. So what the hell was that? And like you say, what surrounds it, what preceded it, and what came after. I just, something about that just is fascinating. I'd like to get a guest on the show to talk about that isn't looking at it from some sort of religious standpoint, but rather from maybe like you said, like a historical account, like a bare bones, like here's what people saw. I don't know. I've seen the single alleged photograph from that event, and there's not much you can get out of it. It's extraordinarily degraded, and it's a poor photo to begin with. But I don't know, something like that I'd really like to see more about. I think there could be something to pull on there. And I don't know if it would be anti-structure. I know people over the years have argued that was a mass hypnosis type of thing. That sort of explanation has been put out by skeptics for years. But again, that doesn't fly to me. I don't know. Like I said, if anybody knows of a good book that's subjective, I'd like to hear about it. So drop us an email, paratopiapodcast@gmail.com, and let me know.
Very good. Well, I think we are at the end of our time and probably at the end of our rope. Wait, maybe not the end of our rope. No.
Oh, yeah.
Anything else before we sign off and say see you Sunday?
No, I think that's about it.
All right. See you Sunday.
Bye.
It's Jeff and Jer signing off.
Good night.
Good night, everybody.